Stories and Documentary Network.
Across the vast blue horizon of the Indian and Pacific Oceans lies a world shaped not by land but by water. A world where islands were stepping stones and the sea was a living highway that connected people, ideas, and entire civilizations. Today, we call this place Indonesia, an archipelago of over 17,000 islands. But long before the rise of Srivijaya or Majapahit, before the narratives of Melayu identity took center stage, a deeper and more ancient story unfolded here. A story built by forgotten empires whose influence stretched far beyond their shores. This documentary takes you into that hidden past, into the world of Indonesia's forgotten Austronesian civilizations. For centuries, these early maritime cultures shaped Southeast Asia's destiny. They pioneered long-distance sea travel, developed complex social systems, and built vibrant communities that thrived in harmony with the rhythms of the ocean. Their story is not merely a chapter of Indonesian history, it is part of one of humanity's greatest migrations. From Taiwan to the Philippines, from Borneo to the far reaches of Madagascar and Polynesia, Austronesian voyagers carried their languages, beliefs, and technologies across one of the largest regions ever settled by a single cultural family. Yet despite their monumental achievements, their names are faint, their cities buried, their legacies overshadowed. We often learn of the grand kingdoms that came later, but rarely of the foundations laid by those who came first. In this journey, we look beyond the familiar. We explore the early origins of these seafaring peoples, their culture and daily life, their mastery of the ocean, and the sophisticated societies that emerged long before foreign traders and colonial powers arrived. This is a story of courage, innovation, and identity, an ancient world that deserves to be remembered. It is time to uncover the Austronesian legacy that shaped Indonesia long before history began writing its more famous chapters. To understand Indonesia's forgotten civilizations, we must sail back thousands of years to the moment when the first Austronesian voyagers began crossing the seas. Around 3000 to 2000 BCE, groups of people from Taiwan and the coastal regions of southern China embarked on a migration unlike any the ancient world had seen. They carried with them a distinctive language family, pottery traditions, agricultural knowledge, and the maritime skills that would define their future. These voyagers moved southward into the Philippines, then west into Borneo and Sulawesi, and eventually spread across the entire Indonesian archipelago. Their migration was not a single journey, but a pulse. Waves of movement driven by population growth, curiosity, and the cultural value placed on exploration. For the Austronesians, the ocean was not a barrier. It was an open road. When they reached Indonesia, they encountered indigenous peoples who had lived on these islands for tens of thousands of years, ancestors of today's Papuan and Australo-Melanesian communities. Rather than displacing them entirely, many Austronesian groups blended with these older populations, creating new ethnic identities and cultural traditions that still define Indonesia's diversity today. Indonesia's geography shaped the destiny of these early societies. Volcanoes enriched the soil, creating fertile landscapes ideal for rice, taro, yam, and banana cultivation. Forests provided timber for boats and homes. Rivers served as arteries of transportation and trade. And everywhere, the sea connected island to island, forming natural trade routes that would later grow into vast maritime networks. Archaeological discoveries reveal early settlements based on fishing, farming, and river-based trade. In places like the Maluku Islands, ancient communities gathered spices such as cloves and nutmeg, resources that would one day attract traders from India, Arabia, China, and Europe. By the first millennium BCE, these communities were no longer simple villages. They had developed into structured chiefdoms with leaders, specialized craftsmen, long-distance sailors, ritual experts, and regional trade hubs. Their languages diversified, but their maritime identity remained the same. These were the foundations upon which later Indonesian empires would rise. Long before written history, long before temples and palaces, the early Austronesians shaped the rhythm of life across the archipelago. Life in ancient Austronesian Indonesia flowed with the rhythm of the natural world. Communities grew along coastlines, rivers, and fertile valleys, where the land and sea provided everything they needed. Households were often built on stilts, an ingenious architectural tradition that protected families from floods, animals, and spirits believed to reside in the earth. These homes, with steep roofs and carved wooden beams, reflected a worldview that saw life as both physical and spiritual. Religion was woven into every aspect of society. Austronesian spirituality centered on ancestor worship, nature spirits, and the belief that the universe was alive with invisible forces. Mountains were sacred, rivers carried memories, trees housed spirits. Ritual specialists, shamans, healers, and priests guided ceremonies for birth, death, harvests, and voyages. Even the earliest boat launches were celebrated with offerings to ensure safe passage across uncertain seas. Society was organized around kinship networks. Extended families formed clans, and clans formed villages. Leadership often fell to chiefs chosen for their wisdom, bravery, or ability to maintain harmony. Feasting, storytelling, and communal labor strengthened social bonds. Honor, loyalty, and reciprocity were central values. Trade became a defining feature of daily life. Indonesia's islands produced rare and valuable goods: cloves in Maluku, nutmeg in Banda, gold in Sumatra, resins in Borneo, and pearls in eastern seas. Local trade networks connected communities long before global merchants arrived. Boats carried ceramics, beads, wooden crafts, and foods between islands, forming early economic corridors. Artistic traditions reflected both beauty and belief. Wooden carvings depicted protective ancestors with elongated features and powerful postures. Textiles like ikat displayed symbolic patterns representing stories, spirits, or clan identities. Music and dance blended rhythm with ritual, often performed during harvest festivals or rites of passage. Language united these societies. Across thousands of islands, Austronesian languages carried shared words for stars, boats, winds, and family. These linguistic threads stretched outward across the entire Pacific, showing the astonishing reach of this cultural world. Daily life balanced survival with expression. Men fished, farmed, built boats, and protected the community. Women cultivated crops, crafted textiles, managed trade goods, and preserved myths through oral storytelling. Children grew up learning the sea, its tides, its dangers, its gifts. Over generations, these cultural systems produced societies that were resilient, adaptive, and deeply connected to their environment. It was a civilization built not from stone monuments, but from relationships between people, their ancestors, and the vast ocean that defined their world. One of the greatest achievements of Indonesia's early Austronesian civilizations was their mastery of the sea. At a time when most ancient cultures hesitated to sail beyond the horizon, Austronesian mariners designed vessels capable of crossing thousands of kilometers of open ocean with extraordinary precision. Their most iconic innovation was the outrigger canoe, a remarkable design that provided stability in rough waters and allowed swift movement over long distances. Later, they developed the double-hulled vessel, an engineering masterpiece capable of carrying families, livestock, and cargo across vast stretches of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. These technologies formed the backbone of the Austronesian expansion, enabling settlement across island chains from Madagascar in the west to Easter Island in the east. Their navigational techniques were equally impressive. Without compasses or written maps, they relied on the stars, wind patterns, currents, bird migrations, and even the color of the water to guide their journeys. Their skills were so refined that modern navigators still study them to understand ancient seafaring. Agriculture was another area of innovation. The Austronesians cultivated a diverse range of crops: rice, taro, yam, bananas, and sugarcane, and adapted their farming practices to Indonesia's volcanic soils and monsoon climate. They developed terracing systems, irrigation channels, and intercropping techniques that allowed them to thrive in both fertile valleys and challenging highlands. Their introduction of wet rice agriculture in parts of Indonesia laid the foundation for the staple diets that still characterize Southeast Asia. They were also expert craftsmen. Tools made from stone, shell, and metal reveal a society skilled in metallurgy and woodworking. Early bronze drums, such as the Dong Sun-influenced kettle drums found in Indonesia, show advanced metalworking abilities and a deep understanding of sound resonance. Drums that once echoed across islands during rituals and ceremonies. But perhaps the most profound achievement was their ability to create extensive maritime trade networks. Long before global trade began, Austronesian sailors were exchanging goods across Southeast Asia. Ceramics, obsidian, beads, resins, spices, and textiles moved along ocean routes that connected distant communities. These networks allowed ideas, technologies, and cultures to spread rapidly, forming a shared Austronesian identity across the region. Their influence reached far beyond material achievements. Their languages, now spoken by over 300 million people, represent one of the largest and most widespread language families in the world. Their oral traditions, symbolic motifs, and architectural styles shaped the later kingdoms that would rise in Indonesia. These innovations, born from ingenuity, necessity, and a profound relationship with the sea, laid the groundwork for the empires that followed. They were not merely early island settlers. They were pioneers of the ocean, builders of communities, and innovators whose legacy still echoes across the Indonesian archipelago. Unlike later kingdoms, whose rulers carved their names into stone, the earliest Austronesian civilizations left behind few written records. Their leaders lived in a world where authority was carried not through monuments or inscriptions, but through stories. Oral memories passed from one generation to the next. Yet, even without written chronicles, several figures stand out in regional traditions and archaeological interpretations. Many communities speak of ancient culture heroes, legendary ancestors who brought knowledge from distant lands. Among them is the archetypal seafarer chief, known by different names across islands, but often portrayed as a visionary navigator who led his people to new shores. He represents the courage and leadership of the early Austronesian explorers who guided migrations using celestial signs and deep knowledge of the sea. In parts of Indonesia, oral histories speak of powerful chiefs who organized early settlements. In Sulawesi, stories tell of leaders who united clans into structured chiefdoms. In the Maluku Islands, the ancestors of the Spice Kingdoms managed networks of trade and diplomacy long before foreign traders arrived. These early rulers shaped the political fabric of their societies, maintaining balance, resolving disputes, and protecting their people from external threats. Another important type of leader was the ritual specialist, often regarded as equal in influence to political chiefs. These figures were believed to communicate with ancestors, interpret omens, and guide ceremonies that ensured successful harvests, safe voyages, and social harmony. In many Austronesian societies, spiritual authority was as vital as military power. Archaeology also reveals signs of elite groups who controlled trade routes and resources. Elaborate burial sites, decorated pottery, and bronze artifacts point to social hierarchies led by influential chiefs who commanded loyalty and coordinated regional exchange systems. Though their names are lost, their impact remains. These leaders nurtured communities, maintained alliances, and inspired voyages that expanded the Austronesian world. They were stewards of early Indonesian civilization, guiding their people during an age when the sea was both a challenge and a promise. Even without written chronicles, the legacy of these early rulers lives on in the stories, customs, and cultural identities passed down through generations. For all their achievements, Indonesia's early Austronesian civilizations faced a world filled with natural dangers, shifting alliances, and fierce competition for resources. Life across the archipelago was shaped by both the beauty and volatility of the environment. Volcanoes erupted without warning, reshaping landscapes and destroying entire settlements. Earthquakes triggered tsunamis that swept through coastal communities. These natural forces tested the resilience of early societies, pushing them to adapt or migrate. Environmental challenges influenced how communities organized themselves. Some villages relocated from risky coastlines to safer inland areas. Others sought higher ground after floods or relied on diverse crops to survive unpredictable seasons. The constant need to adapt strengthened their creativity, but it also forced them into cycles of rebuilding. Competition for resources often sparked conflict. Islands, rich in spices, metals, or fertile land, became centers of tension. Groups fought for control of trade routes that carried cloves from Maluku, resins from Borneo, and fine pottery from coastal ports. Rivalries between neighboring chiefdoms sometimes escalated into skirmishes, raids, or prolonged periods of distrust. As societies grew more complex, internal struggles also emerged. Leadership disputes, clan rivalries, and challenges to spiritual authority sometimes divided communities. Oral traditions tell of chiefs who were overthrown, alliances that fractured, and villages that split into new settlements due to personal or political disagreements. The arrival of foreign influences added another layer of complexity. As Indian, Chinese, and later Arab traders entered Southeast Asian waters, they brought new goods, religions, and expectations. Some Austronesian communities embraced these exchanges, while others resisted. The introduction of new belief systems created cultural transformations that were not always peaceful. Conflicts sometimes erupted between traditionalists and those who adopted new spiritual or political ideas. Disease posed another challenge. With increased trade and movement, new illnesses spread between islands, impacting vulnerable populations and altering demographic patterns. Yet, despite these hardships, the Austronesian societies endured. Their adaptability, shaped by their intimate knowledge of both land and sea, allowed them to survive and evolve. Even in times of crisis, communal cooperation remained a central value. When disaster struck, villages gathered to rebuild homes, replant fields, and renew alliances. Conflict, in many ways, forged their identity. It shaped their leadership structures, influenced migration patterns, and prepared them for the more complex political landscapes that would emerge in later centuries. Through every challenge, these early Indonesian civilizations demonstrated a remarkable resilience, one that carried their legacy forward into the powerful kingdoms that would rise from their foundations. No civilization, no matter how vast or brilliant, exists in a vacuum. The story of this ancient Indian maritime empire is not one of sudden collapse, but of gradual transformation, shaped by shifting trade patterns, rising regional powers, and the ever-changing winds of history. As the Indian Ocean world evolved, so too did the structures that once sustained this mighty seafaring realm. By the later centuries, foreign trade routes began to shift westward, especially as new powers emerged along the Arabian and East African coasts. The growing influence of the Roman Empire, followed by the rise of Islamic maritime networks, redirected trade flows and gradually reduced the commercial monopoly once held by this Indian empire. At the same time, environmental changes, such as silting of rivers, monsoon irregularities, or the decline of certain port cities, further weakened its strategic dominance. Internally, political fragmentation played a crucial role. As coastal provinces grew wealthier, local governors and merchant guilds gained autonomy, often competing with central authority rather than supporting it. Rival kingdoms in the interior began asserting control over trade corridors, challenging the empire's ability to regulate maritime commerce. Cultural assimilation also contributed to transformation. As trade flourished, foreign ideas, technologies, and communities settled along the coast. Over time, these influences reshaped the region's identity, leading to hybrid political and cultural models that diluted the original imperial framework. Eventually, the empire did not disappear, it evolved. Its legacy diffused into a constellation of regional powers, each continuing aspects of its maritime tradition. Ports remained active, shipbuilding techniques survived, and merchant guilds retained influence long after the central authority faded. Thus, the decline of the maritime empire is better understood not as an ending, but as a metamorphosis, an adaptation to the changing rhythms of the Indian Ocean world. Today, the legacy of this ancient Indian maritime empire can be found across the Indian Ocean rim, woven into languages, art, architecture, and living coastal traditions. From East Africa to Indonesia, echoes of Indian craftsmanship, religious symbolism, and cultural practices attest to centuries of peaceful exchange that shaped entire societies. These were not merely trade interactions, they were cultural bridges that created one of the earliest forms of globalization. Modern India continues to draw strength from this maritime heritage. Coastal states still carry the names of ancient ports, while contemporary shipyards in places like Kochi or Vishakhapatnam echo a tradition thousands of years old. Maritime festivals, rituals honoring sea gods, and boat-building methods that survived through oral tradition reveal a living connection to the seafaring past. On a global scale, the empire's legacy lies in its pioneering role in building international trade networks. The concept of transoceanic commerce, linking distant societies through mutual benefit rather than conquest, remains one of its most enduring contributions. In a world increasingly defined by interconnected economies, this approach feels remarkably modern. Culturally, the empire served as a conduit for religious and philosophical ideas. Hinduism and Buddhism traveled alongside merchants, transforming landscapes from Sri Lanka to Southeast Asia. Temples built in the architectural styles of the subcontinent, inscriptions referencing Indian kings, and epics retold in new languages all serve as reminders of these ancient maritime pathways. From a geopolitical perspective, the empire's history highlights India's long-standing strategic importance in the Indo-Pacific region. As modern nations compete for influence across the same waters once dominated by ancient Indian merchants, the relevance of that legacy becomes clearer than ever. Ultimately, the story of this civilization is not frozen in the past. It continues to inspire modern Indian diplomacy, culture, and economic strategy, reminding the nation and the world of a time when the Indian Ocean was not just a sea, but a highway of human connection forged by Indian hands. As the sun sinks into the horizon of the Indian Ocean, its shimmering reflection reveals more than the waves. It reveals memories. Memories of ships carved from ancient forests, of sailors navigating by the stars, of merchants carrying stories and treasures across boundless waters. In the quiet hum of the tide, you can almost hear their voices, the echoes of a civilization that once connected worlds. This was not a kingdom of swords, but of sails. Not an empire of conquest, but of influence, earned through knowledge, craftsmanship, and a deep understanding of the sea. Though centuries have passed, the ocean still whispers its legacy, reminding us that greatness is not defined by walls or armies, but by the bridges we build across cultures and continents. Today, as modern ships cross the same routes and nations rise and fall along the same shores, the spirit of that ancient maritime empire lives on. It survives in every port, every trade wind, every story carried across the sea. And so the journey continues, not just through history, but forward into the future. A future shaped by the same waters that once carried India's greatest seafarers toward the unknown and toward destiny.